So let's do it, guys. Let's talk about the teams who will have the best shot at going worst to first. We got to do it. We got to just get it over with. Everybody does it on every sports platform, content factory. Here we go. Let's take a look at this. So here it is. Over the last 10 seasons, we've had at least one team make the jump every year. That's why we do this. It's like just a tradition. 11 squads have done it. 7 of them have won at least one playoff game. 3 of those made it to the Super Bowl, with the 2017 Eagles being the sole Super Bowl champion out of the group. We had 2 teams pull it off last year, the Bears and the Patriots. So lost in what happened. Let's take a look here. Out of this year's group, taking a look here, 2 teams have the potential to get it done. You got the Lions. I don't think we're talking about them enough. And if you really think about it, Hamilton and I went back and forth on this over the weekend. People are eating hot dogs and hamburgers. We're talking, are we underrating Jared Goff? Listen, what happened down the stretch, I feel like we forget how fantastic he was. Gibbs, still there. He's a home run hitter. Faster than everybody. A dangerous, dangerous player. And they've done a good job addressing the O-line, right? They fixed the problems. The defense is a question. They addressed that. So the 9-8 last place finish boiled down to this. The injuries to the entire secondary, which has been a bit of a theme. And number 2, the seeming disconnect with the play calling throughout the year. So the injury luck we can't do much about. We can pray. But the defense is talented if they can stay healthy. And as for the play calling, okay, we got a new guy in town. Drew, here he is. Anybody can 9 out of 10 people name him. This is Drew Petzing, okay? What can he do? He joins the Lions from AZ, as you can see. Hard to give a full eval. Don't know much about him. What went on with the Cardinals? I don't know. The starting quarterback missed half of their game, so who knows? Bright, young offensive mind. I believe in the infrastructure with the Lions. I believe in their hiring process, if nothing else. If I had never seen this guy or watched anything that went on with the team, I believe in their hiring. I believe in the culture and what it takes to get a job there. Their Indeed.com is pretty tough with the Lions. He's a huge wild card in all of this, but if you can get the offense to some consistency, just consistency. It doesn't have to be Ben Johnson for me to think that they can do better than this and return to greatness. And beyond that, when you look at the NFC North, aren't they all kind of close in terms of talent? We're probably going to get at least, 3 playoff teams out of the division. They're all great. And the Lions' last place schedule, that kind of swings it a little bit, right? For what they maybe don't have in talent or play calling or Ben Johnsoning. If you go by last year's winning percentage, the Lions have the 6th easiest schedule in the league this year. When you factor in what's gone on this offseason, it may be even easier than that. Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis, he did a really good breakdown of this. Shout out to him. And he does have Detroit with the easiest schedule in the league. And that's why they're favorites, by the way. Hey, faves to win the NFC North on FanDuel Sportsbook. They sit at plus 160. Packers after that at plus 230. Bears plus 320. I'd still put the Bears and Packers ahead of them. But when you talk about worst to first potential, the recipe's there for Detroit to get it done. Okay, the other team I want to get to quickly that I think can go worst to first.
The news that broke right before the weekend, but right after our last show was, of course, the much anticipated Jack Campbell extension. It's a brand new deal, and I don't think there was any doubt that it would get done. And the way it all came together in classic Lions fashion, no drama, just hey, this is what made sense. It is a 4-year extension, $81 million. And of course, that was after the 5th-year option was declined, because the 5th-year option would have resulted in around $21.9 million. And I've already done enough accounting and numbers and math to feel uncomfortable, because that's not my area of expertise. But Bradford Banta, this is what good organizations do.
That's what they do. They take care of their own. If you perform out on the field, they will take care of you financially. And that's one thing whenever Jack Campbell was drafted, much to the behest of probably the fans and the prognosticators in the first round. But,
idiots like me.
Well, whenever, I think Bill Walsh put it best. He goes, it doesn't matter when these players get drafted as long as they're on the squad. And I think that draft class is something to be said. Feather in the cap for Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, the amount of research and the productivity that these players have done for the Detroit Lions. And you look at the contract. Yeah, I mean it's a nice contract. He's the second highest paid off the ball linebacker in the league now. I believe he's only second to Fred Warner from the San Francisco 49ers. So, but what, with this contract being signed by Campbell, what does it tell not only the team, but what does it also tell the public? I'm a firm believer in this, and then this is a culture contract, and it not only sends a message to the team, but it also tells people in and around that stay involved with the Detroit Lions that Jack Campbell's here to stay, but also he is a pillar of this defense and of the Detroit Lions. So it'll be good to have him around and look for many years of production to come from Jack Campbell.
Yeah, I think this is their way of rewarding a guy who really stepped up in a lot of big ways last year. And they're essentially handing him the keys to take over the Lions defense post Alex Anzalone not being a part of the organization anymore. So, to your point, Bradford, I think it does really set a standard for the younger guys that are working towards those bigger contracts. And I know at the time we were all saying, oh, they declined his 5th-year option. What are they going to do? This and that. But really, they were just being smart financially, I think, and waiting and, working with, the cap and figuring out what the best option is for him to still be a part of the team, but be a little bit smart about how they, sign him to the right contract. So I think this is, a great step in the right direction for him. And, if you become a foundational piece here, in Detroit, we're going to keep you here and do what we can to make you happy and, be a part of what's to come. So yeah, he's the new head guy taking over that linebacker room, which is exciting too.
Yeah, not that there was ever any question of the on-field performance, and you look at the stats, and there's lots of different ways to slice it all up. And if you're a pro football focus guy, I'm love-hate relationship with PFF, but 90.2 overall pro football grade for the last year, which was second among all qualified NFL linebackers, trailing only Fred Warner. And Bradford, I think you even said the contract is now second highest paid, only to Fred Warner. So maybe Pro Football Focus is onto something with that grade, because it seems to go along with the payment structure. But also all Pro Bowl player, and Nat, you said it, just the unquestioned face of this Lions defense moving forward.
Yeah, I honestly, I'll be curious to see, and kind of pivot a little bit and still keep it on the defensive side of the ball. I'll be curious to see. So there were a lot of first years last year, and talking about, players, and on the field, and the jump that they're going to be making in year 2. Now, staying on the defensive side of the ball, one of the things that I'm going to be curious to see is the defensive coordinating ability of Kelvin Sheppard heading into year 2, and the amount of knowledge that he has gained just from that first year, and having a chance to sit back a little bit and take in the 10,000 foot view instead of being right in the mix of things. I think I think we are going to be looking at a little bit different defense. I know the philosophy will remain the same, and he will be aggressive. But if you look at the pieces that are starting to fall into place for the Detroit Lions, with the possibility of a couple of additions still to be added at a later date, possibly, I don't know, 30 minutes after we get out off of this show.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's why we have a show tomorrow. So
Yeah, there you
we'll
go.
be able to cover it. Be able to
For
cover it then.
sure.
But I'm looking forward to seeing how Kelvin Sheppard has matured as a defensive coordinator.
I think what will help him as well is, him interviewing for the Dolphins job and some of these other, um, you know, coaching gigs. I mean, I think having to speak your philosophy out loud to these other organizations and hearing what other teams are looking for, I think can change your perspective on things as well. So he might have grown in that way too, having to get away from the Lions for a second and learn what these other organizations are, their standards are, their principles, and maybe he's learned that way too. So that could be an interesting part to it too.
For sure. And I think Stephen Baffy here makes a great point. Some interesting comments. Love mixing in these comments to our live audience. That's the beauty of the live show. So let your voice be heard. Stephen Baffy, 7937. I'm all for the Lions taking care of their guys. However, to sign Gibbs, Laporta, and Branch at or near market value of 20.2, 18.2, and 15 to 6 in that range million, respectively, they will have to restructure Goff or Saint or Sewell. When they do that, they will effectively be borrowing against the future cap, which will create a window against the cap that comes due in 4 to 5 years. So I get where Steven's going with that, kind of thinking ahead, playing the future game. But what I would say to that is, like what's the alternative to send your guys packing and say tough luck and we know you performed, but we're not going to reward you? I mean, Bradford Bant, I'll go to you because you are the NFL is a business expert and roster construction. There's no feelings in anything else, and it's not wrong. I don't disagree with what Stephen Baffy's saying, but I would also I'd argue that you have to do this.
No, it's a matter of numbers. It's a matter of production, and the constant chatter inside the building with the front office personnel, talking about the personnel people and the capologist and the coaches all coincide, and you got to make sure everybody's on the same page and you talk through scenarios. If you always play the what if game, and you have to have answers to the questions that are asked in these types of meetings, and then also to think long term on, okay, what do we want our roster to look like, X amount of days, X amount of months, X amount of years down the road. And then how do we get to that situation? Because essentially, Jake, Nat, you're running a business, and this business has people, and it has people that perform. And you look at the players, which are, truth be told, they are the product that you put out onto the field to perform along with the coaches. And how are these people performing? What are they doing to make themselves better? Because you're constantly being watched as a player and as a coach, and being judged on whether or not you're performing up to expectations, or you exceeding those expectations, or are you below par in your performance. And these conversations are had constantly. And, and the questions are being asked, what type of leader is this person? Where does he rank on the roster, 1 through 53, or even 1 through 65 now because of the practice squad? Do you see this player trending up? Do you see this player trending down? Or do you see this player just plateauing right now? And then you ask the question, if the player is plateauing, then what can we do to get him to ascend? If he doesn't ascend and he starts descending, then it's time to go find competition and release that player. So it goes back to my, I've used the analogy before, is the player leaking oil, and then how much oil is he leaking? So
That's right.
Bradford's got the best analogies for everything.
No doubt, no doubt. And I do want to
Gotta
be
make
fair.
it fit, Nat.
That's right. That's
I
right.
love it.
Be fair to Stephen Baffy, because I didn't read all his every single comment he had, because the follow-up is the only alternative is to move on and either let the guys walk in free agency for comp picks or trade them like they did Montgomery. And the example he uses, if you look at what Dallas did with Micah Parsons, the Lions could be making a move like that down the road. And obviously that's a big splash that Dallas, there was a lot more going on than just trading.
I was gonna say, you were all in the thick of it, Jake.
Just trading Micah Parsons for some picks because they didn't want to pay him. There was the agent side of it, the lack of communication between him and Jerry Jones, the he said, she said, and I don't see the drama unfolding like that in the Lions organization. But you never know. But the concept is there, where you get a big name player like that that's going to demand quite the haul, and the alternative to not paying them is trading them for that long haul.
Yeah, no, and it's God, guys. I mean, you're beating a dead horse here, but it's a business.
Yeah, no, it's one thing to beat the dead horse, but when the dead horse needs to be beat, I don't know where I'm going with that. When it needs to be said, it needs to be said. It's not the wrong thing to say. But what also needs to be said is whatever Miss Natalie Kerwin has coming up on Nat's Notes. That's what's coming up next.
Whoop, whoop. Let's do it, people.
Any tease?
Any tease? Let's see. You know what?
The tease
I'm not
is the
even
tease.
the tease is the tease. We'll check it out when we get back. It's
that.
something we hit on a little bit last week, but I'm expanding on it today.
I like that. The ceiling
So
is the roof.
for the loyal listeners, they
There you go.
might remember.
The real ones. Back in just a second.